They told me it was just a quiet job, minimum wage, dusting old shelves, restocking cartridges no one buys anymore. Easy money, they said. But on my very first night at Press Start Retro Games, I found a handwritten rule sheet taped behind the counter. Rule number 1, don't answer the red phone after 1:13 a.m. Rule number 5, if you see a customer wearing 8-bit eyes, do not make eye contact. I thought it was some sick prank until I heard the phone ring, and it was exactly 1:13. The first thing I noticed about Press Start Retro Games was the smell. A strange mix of faded cardboard, old plastic, and faint mildew that reminded me of my grandfather's basement. The store sat at the edge of an abandoned strip mall in Westmore, a town no one visited unless they had to. It was the kind of place where time felt stuck, like pressing pause on a forgotten VHS tape. I needed the job. My college loans were suffocating, and the university bookstore had just cut my hours. When I saw the night shift listing on Craigslist, I applied without thinking. No interview, just an email back with 2 lines. Shift starts at 10 p.m. Don't be late. The sender was just listed as owner. So there I was, on a chilly Thursday night, unlocking the rusted security gate with a key left under the doormat. The store's lights flickered weakly as I stepped inside, and I immediately felt a drop in temperature. Behind the counter was a cracked CRT TV, shelves packed with ancient Nintendo and Sega cartridges, and in the corner, an arcade machine humming like it was alive. That's when I found the rules. They were handwritten in black ink on yellowing paper and taped beneath the cash register drawer. There were exactly 7 of them. 1. Do not answer the red phone after 1:13 a.m. 2. If the arcade machine turns on by itself, unplug it immediately. 3. Do not touch the mystery cartridge in the locked glass case. 4. At exactly midnight, sweep the store once. If anything follows you, don't stop sweeping. 5. If a customer enters with 8-bit eyes, do not make eye contact. Direct them to aisle 6. 6. Never turn off the CRT TV. It watches for you. 7. At the end of your shift, leave through the back door. Do not use the front entrance after 5 a.m. I chuckled nervously, assuming it was some kind of elaborate initiation prank. Maybe the previous clerk had a sense of humor. The shift started slow. I dusted a few shelves, restocked some box copies of Castlevania, and sorted through a crate of untested cartridges that had been sitting in the back for what looked like decades. Every so often, the neon open sign outside buzzed like it was fighting for life. It was around 11:30 p.m. when the CRT TV began flickering on its own. I hadn't touched it, and the remote was still taped to the counter. At first, it just cycled static. Then, briefly, a grainy image appeared. A boy with long bangs obscuring his face stood in the aisle between Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. He wasn't moving. The screen fuzzed again, then went black. I spun around. Nothing. The aisle was empty, but the CRT TV stayed on, glowing gently like a nightlight. The time ticked toward midnight, and I remembered rule number 4. It said to sweep the store once at exactly 12 a.m. It seemed weirdly specific, but something in me, curiosity or maybe paranoia, pushed me to grab the broom. The lights dimmed for a second as the clock struck midnight. I began sweeping slowly from the front toward the back. Dust rolled lazily under the broom bristles, but the store suddenly felt aware, like something was holding its breath, watching me from just beyond the aisles. As I swept past the PlayStation section, I felt it, a soft thud behind me, like a shoe gently tapping tile. I didn't turn. I remembered the rule. If anything follows you, don't stop sweeping. So I kept going. Thud. Another step. Closer. Thud. Something exhaled, wet and shaky, and I thought I felt cold breath brush my neck. I pushed the broom harder, hands trembling. The sound stopped when I reached the back room. I leaned against the door, chest pounding, broom clenched in white knuckles. When I turned around, there was nothing there. At least, that's what I told myself. The hours crawled past, my nerves scraping raw. The CRT TV didn't flicker again, but I couldn't stop glancing at it. Its screen glowed dimly with faint lines of static, like it was dreaming. Then came 1:13 a.m. It was almost like the room shifted. The air thickened, humming in my ears like pressure before a storm. The silence was total. Even the buzzing neon sign outside had gone dead. And then the red phone on the wall rang. Shrill, piercing, mechanical. I stared at it, frozen. It hadn't rung all night. I didn't even know it could ring. One ring. Two. Three. I stepped backward, remembering the first rule. Do not answer the red phone after 1:13 a.m. The ringing continued. 4. 5. Each ring seemed louder, more urgent. I covered my ears, but it vibrated inside my skull. I swear, I could hear a whisper under the ring. Something like a voice gasping my name through the receiver. Eli. Eli, pick up. No one here knew my name. I hadn't told the owner. Hell, I hadn't even signed paperwork. The phone rang a sixth time, then silence. I waited. Nothing. A gust of cold air rushed through the store, strong enough to rattle the empty cartridge boxes on the shelves. I looked toward the front door. It was still locked. That's when I saw it. A man, or at least something shaped like a man, stood by the arcade machine. He wore a hoodie pulled low over his face, hands in pockets. But it wasn't the figure that made me panic. It was the eyes. Pixelated, not like pixel art. Literal 8-bit squares of glowing blue and red, like a glitched out video game sprite pasted over a human face. I want to scream. Instead, I remembered rule number 5. If a customer enters with 8-bit eyes, do not make eye contact. Direct them to aisle 6. Aisle 6. I swallowed hard. I kept my head low and slowly raised my hand, pointing down the middle aisle. Aisle 6. I stammered. The figure turned without speaking and glided toward it. Not walked, glided, like frames skipping forward. As soon as it disappeared behind the shelves, I ducked behind the counter, trembling so violently my teeth chattered. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Then, from aisle 6, I heard the soft sound of plastic clattering against tile, like cartridges being dumped out. Then silence again. When I peeked out, the aisle was empty. But the back glass case, the one I was told not to touch, was cracked open. Inside, where the mystery cartridge had been, there was now a sticky, black smear across the velvet. I didn't go near it. The rest of the night crawled by in a haze of terror and caffeine. I didn't sleep. I didn't sit. I just stared at that cursed CRT TV, waiting for it to flicker again. At 4:59 a.m., I stood at the back door, backpack already slung over my shoulder. When the clock hit 5 o'clock, I pushed the door open and stepped into the alley behind the store. The air felt lighter. A crow cawed in the distance, and the horizon was turning the faintest shade of blue. I didn't look back. I told myself it was a bad dream, a result of stress, maybe even hallucinations. I tried to believe it, but when I returned the next night, the mystery cartridge was gone from the case entirely. The CRT TV was still on, now showing a new image, a blurry frame of me pointing toward aisle 6. and someone had crossed out rule number 3 with thick red marker. Beneath it, a new rule had been scribbled in jagged handwriting. It's out now. Don't let it follow you home. I thought following the rules would keep me safe. I didn't answer the red phone. I swept the floor. I even avoided the thing with 8-bit eyes. But it didn't matter. When I got home after that shift, my apartment fell off. The static followed me. The shadows didn't move right. And last night, I found a game cartridge on my kitchen table, one I never brought home. It wasn't labeled, just smeared with something black. I don't own a console, but I swear to God, it was already playing. Sleep was impossible after that first shift. Even with my blackout curtains drawn tight and 3 deadbolts locked behind me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had trailed me home. Every creak in the walls, every hum from the fridge made my skin crawl. I even unplugged my TV when I saw faint white lines crawling across the screen, just like the CRT in the store. I didn't tell anyone. Who could I tell? Hey, I think a haunted game store is watching me. They'd laugh me out of the room. I tried convincing myself it was all in my head. Until the second night. The store looked darker than before. Not dimmer, darker, like the light was being sucked inward. Even the neon open sign, which had previously buzzed with weak life, was completely dead now. The front display window had a long crack across it that hadn't been there the night before. Inside, everything smelled stronger, mustier. The air was heavy, like a basement after a flood. I stepped behind the counter and immediately noticed a change. The rule sheet. It had new handwriting, the same jagged scrawl that had replaced rule number 3 the night before. Now, rule number 8 had been added. 8. If the mystery cartridge is not in the case, burn sage by the arcade cabinet at 2 a.m. Do not forget. There was a small bundle of sage now sitting beside the register, wrapped in twine and flecked with something reddish-brown. A rusted Zippo lighter sat next to it. I didn't ask questions. The CRT TV buzzed faintly. This time, no static, just a black screen with a blinking pixel in the center. The pixel pulsed red, slowly like a heartbeat. As I clocked in, if you could call scribbling my name in a moldy logbook clocking in, I noticed something else strange. A game controller, old SNES style, was sitting on the counter. Its cord was cut, frayed, and curling like it had been chewed off. I hadn't seen it there the night before. I went about my tasks as usual, dusting shelves, avoiding aisle 6. Every time I passed the empty display case, my stomach turned. The black smear was still there, only now it was shaped like a handprint. At midnight, I swept the floor again. This time, I didn't hear footsteps behind me, but as I passed the PlayStation section, one of the jewel cases shattered, loudly, violently, without anyone touching it. I didn't stop sweeping. I didn't look back. 1:13 a.m. came and went. No phone call. Number 8-bit eyed customers. But the dread was worse than ever. I kept looking toward the arcade cabinet in the far corner. It hadn't powered on by itself, but the screen was faintly glowing with an inner light, just beneath the surface like something inside was waiting. At 1:58 a.m., I grabbed the bundle of sage and walked over to it. My hands trembled as I flicked the Zippo. The flame caught fast. As soon as I lit the sage and held it near the cabinet, I heard a sound. A giggle. High-pitched, like an old-school game, sprite laughing, layered under real human breath. The scent of burning herbs filled the air, thick and sharp. The screen of the arcade flickered once, then again, and then a face appeared. Not human, pixelated, melting, warped. It screamed silently, jaw opening into digital chaos, like a mouth swallowing code. Then the entire cabinet went dark, and the smell of burned sage turned sour, like spoiled meat. Something whispered directly into my ear. Too late. I dropped the sage bundle and backed away, heart thundering. But the whisper had come from behind me, and when I turned, no one. The rest of the night was a blur of paranoia. At one point, I swear I heard footsteps in the ceiling tiles. Not rats. Something heavy. Something breathing. At 5 a.m., I bolted through the back door again without looking back. Home was no safer. I was dead on my feet, exhausted. I tossed my keys on the counter and collapsed onto the couch. That's when I saw it. The game cartridge. It sat in the center of my coffee table, surrounded by a faint ring of black ash. I hadn't brought it there. I hadn't taken anything from the store. I would never take anything from that place. It was unlabeled. Just an old SNES cart, gray plastic faded, and something thick smeared over the front. Tar, maybe, or dry blood. I didn't want to know. I stared at it for a full 10 minutes, paralyzed. And then, my TV turned on, by itself. It was unplugged. Static filled the screen for a moment. Then an 8-bit menu popped up, crudely drawn letters spelling out. Player 1, Eli. No controller was connected. The cartridge wasn't even inserted into anything. Then the screen flickered to a game level. A top-down pixelated version of my apartment. Identical layout. Identical couch. A tiny figure, me, was standing in the living room. I watched, horrified, as the sprite version of myself began moving on its own. It walked toward the window, paused, then turned around, faced the screen, and smiled. The screen went black. That was last night. When I returned for the third shift, I almost didn't go in. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached. But the moment I considered driving away, the CRT screen inside the store flickered to life, casting pale light through the window. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Don't make it angry. You're part of the story now. I stepped out of the car and approached the store. The air outside was still, too still. No wind, no insects, no noise. As I unlocked the gate, I noticed something new. All the posters in the windows had changed. They used to be ads for Donkey Kong Country and Final Fantasy VII. Now, they were pixelated screenshots of me behind the counter, holding the broom, pointing to aisle 6. Someone, or something, was watching, and it was recording. Inside, a new note was waiting for me beneath the rule sheet. It simply said, "You should not have brought it home." A chill ran through my entire body. I know I didn't, but somehow it had found me. Then the phone rang again. Not the red one. This time, it was a payphone in the back of the store I hadn't even noticed before. Dusty, cracked, its cord twisted and frayed. It hadn't been there the last 2 nights. I was sure of it. I stared at it as it rang. 4 times. On the 5th, I picked up. Static. Then a voice low and distorted. "You're not the first, but you could be the last." The line went dead. When I hung up, I noticed the arcade cabinet was glowing again. But this time, it wasn't alone. Standing beside it, partially cloaked in shadows, was a figure. Tall, thin, skin stretched too tight, wearing a tattered name tag that simply said Marcus. He looked like he hadn't blinked in years. And in his hands, he held the mystery cartridge, still smeared in black, still pulsing like it was alive. You think you're safe if you follow the rules. That's what they want you to believe. But rules change, games glitch, and sometimes sometimes a new player spawns. I thought I was alone in this nightmare. I was wrong. Last night, I met Marcus, the last night shift worker. The one they said disappeared. He didn't vanish. He never left. And now he wants me to finish what he started. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't move like a normal person, either. More like a puppet, each joint turning too sharply, like his bones have been replaced with rusted hinges. His name tag shimmered faintly in the glow of the arcade cabinet. Letters burned into cracked plastic. We stared at each other for a long time. I wanted to say something, ask who he was, what he was, why he was still here. But my throat was frozen, locked up like my body knew better than my brain. He held the mystery cartridge out to me. Black ooze dripped from it now, thick and tar-like, pooling onto the scuffed tile floor. "Play," Marcus said. His voice was wrong, flattened, garbled, like it came through a corrupted speaker. "It's your turn." I shook my head. "I didn't bring it home," I said. "I follow the rules." He smiled, or tried to. The expression was more like a glitchy facial animation, jaw jerking upward, lips twitching at odd angles. "You think that matters?" His voice distorted again. The rules were written after the game began. I stepped backward, but the air behind me felt dense, like walking into invisible cobwebs. The CRT behind the counter flickered back to life. The same pixelated title screen blinked across it. Player 1, Eli. Player 2, Marcus. I turned to run toward the door, but the exit was gone. I mean that literally. Where the door had been, there was now a blank wall of game shelves, stocked with cartridges I didn't recognize. All the labels were scratched out. Every case was smeared with that same black gunk. I turned back to Marcus, but he was gone. So was the cartridge. But the cabinet was now on. Its screen flashed red and green in waves, like a heartbeat skipping and restarting. The joystick twitched on its own. I didn't want to get closer. I had to get closer. The moment I touched the joystick, the screen shifted, not to a menu, but a camera feed. It showed the inside of the store, as if from a bird's eye view. I could see myself from above, and someone else, moving through the aisles. Not Marcus, not me, another figure. It was wrong. Their shape flickered with every frame, like the game couldn't decide what they looked like. Male, then female. Child, then adult. Their limbs didn't animate properly, knees bending the wrong way, head twitching side to side like a broken bobblehead. I let go of the joystick. The screen blinked. Then it showed a side-scrolling platformer, 8-bit style, with a character that looked exactly like me. Blue hoodie, brown hair, tired eyes. There was no star button. The level just began playing. I stepped back. A voice whispered from the coin return slot of the cabinet. "The game doesn't end unless someone wins." The rest of the shift worked after that. Time stopped feeling linear. The clocks froze at 2:12 a.m. The walls started bleeding pixels, literal pixels, little squares of static that floated through the air like dust motes. The store began to rearrange itself. The aisle shuffled when I wasn't looking. I turned my back for a second, and when I turned around, the GameCube shelf would be where the NES games had been. Posters on the wall would blink, flicker, change. 1 second I'd see Mortal Kombat, the next a corrupted image of me. But 8-bit, eyes hollow, mouth open like I was mid-scream. I hid behind the counter. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Don't play the game. It plays you. The lights shut off. Everything went black. And then I heard footsteps. Bare feet. Slapping on tile. Getting closer. I clutched the broom. The same stupid broom I'd swept with every night. And held it like a weapon. The footsteps stopped, right behind the counter. I held my breath. Silence. Then a voice, not human, rasped. Player 2 is ready. When the lights flickered back on, the store was almost normal again. The game shelves were back in place. The CRT was dark. The phone was silent. No Marcus. No figure in the aisles. But something had changed. There was a new rule on the paper behind the counter. 9. If player 2 enters the game, do not let them win. I didn't understand what it meant. Not until the customer came in at 4:03 a.m. He looked real, normal, even. A guy around my age, flannel shirt, jeans, baseball cap. He smiled politely and asked if I had a copy of Chrono Trigger in stock. I stared at him, unsure what to say. He blinked, then grinned wider. Too wide. His teeth glitched, one moment straight, the next jagged, then pixelated. You should really check aisle 6, he said. I dropped the broom. He vanished, just flickered out of existence. A cold wind blew through the store. The lights overhead dimmed to a sickly yellow. I looked back at the counter. The CRT had turned back on. Player 2 has taken the lead. When the shift ended, the door was back. I stumbled outside, barely breathing, the world beyond the store eerily quiet. No birds, no cars, just stillness. I rushed home, locked every door, closed every window, and threw the cartridge into the trash bin outside my apartment. But this morning, it was back, waiting on my coffee table again. This time, it had a new label. It said, Game 3, Final Round. The screen turned on before I even touched the remote. No input, no controller, just static and a familiar, pixelated voice whispering from the speakers. One of you has to lose. Ever played a game that remembers you? A game that doesn't stop when you press power, that waits for you in your dreams? I thought quitting would save me. I thought throwing that cartridge away meant it was over. But the game never ends. It only resets. And now I've unlocked something far worse. A secret level they buried for a reason, and it's still hungry for players. Sleep didn't come easy after that night. I'd see flickers of pixelated movement every time I closed my eyes, flashing scoreboards behind my eyelids. The name Marcus and Eli burned into the darkness. That damn cartridge stayed on my coffee table like a cursed totem. No matter how many times I trashed it, set it on fire, or even dropped it into a sewer grate 3 blocks away, it always returned. Clean, untouched, like it had never been destroyed. The worst part, it started showing up before I got home. One night, I opened the door, and there it was, propped up against my pillow like it had made itself comfortable. I didn't even touch it anymore. I couldn't, because now, the game was inside everything. It began infecting the real world. I noticed in small ways at first. My microwave glitched out and displayed Player 3 ready. My phone would buzz with unknown numbers, showing messages like, bonus round unlocked, next level at work, don't be late. Even my TV flickered late at night, showing a pixelated recreation of my apartment with something watching me through the windows. Something with no face and a static-filled body. But nothing compared to what happened when I showed up for my next shift. Because Marcus was there. This time, he was waiting. He sat behind the counter like nothing was wrong, eyes fixed on the store's security monitor. His body still moved wrong, like a video game character with missing frames. I didn't speak. I couldn't. He looked over and smiled, the skin around his eyes pulling back too tightly. You're late, he said. I'm not supposed to be here. I whispered. You never were, Marcus replied, standing. But now that you're in the bonus level, it doesn't matter. They let you see behind the code. That means you're part of it now. He reached into the drawer behind the counter and pulled out a dusty, sealed box. I saved this for you. He slid it across the counter. I didn't want to open it, but of course I did. Inside was a stack of worn employee handbooks, all of them soaked in something dark and dried. The top one had the name Cassidy written in red ink across the front. I flipped it open. Every rule I'd been following was there, but under it, scribbled in frantic handwriting, were additions. Rule number 5 is a lie. If you beat the game, you don't leave. You become part of it. Marcus cheated. That's why he's stuck. Level 0 is the store. Level 1 is the cartridge. Level 2 is the player's mind. And then, level 3 is memory. That page was soaked in something too wet to be just ink. Marcus leaned in close. I tried to beat it, he whispered. I made it to level 3. That's where I remembered everything. Who I was, who the others were, what we did to unleash this. I backed away. You let it out? I asked. No, he croaked. We played it. That's all it needed. The CRT behind him flickered on by itself. The screen showed an old, top-down RPG now, the kind from the Super Nintendo days. But the party menu was all wrong. Party members. Marcus, corrupted. Cassidy, missing. Tyler, erased. Eli. I didn't want to look, but my name hovered with a glitchy cursor. Next to it, a flickering icon, a small red heart. Your health is still full, Marcus said, backing away. That won't last. The store's lights dimmed again. Not the normal flicker, but like the sunset had entered the building. Long shadows stretched from the aisles, bending and twisting unnaturally. A low, throaty growl echoed from the back room. Not mechanical, organic. I ran, but the floor shifted beneath me, literally, like the tiles were no longer fixed in place. They ripple underfoot like water, and I sank into them, not falling, but loading into a new screen. When I blinked, I wasn't in the store anymore. I was in a pixelated version of it. Everything around me was blocky now. 16-bit visuals. I looked down at my hands. They were square, my clothes low-res, and I was holding the cartridge. The HUD said, Level 3, Forgotten Memories. The aisles ahead of me pulsed with dark energy, coated in a glitchy fog. VHS tapes floated midair. I saw myself, younger, maybe 10 years old, riding my bike past the same game store. I'd stopped outside and seen someone arguing inside. A man, a boy, Marcus. Me? It was me. I remembered now. I'd been here before. I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. A man had screamed. The power had gone out. A light had flashed red in the back room. And then, I forgot. Until now. The level distorted the deeper I walked in. Memories embedded in code. Each aisle showing scenes from the past. One aisle showed Cassidy playing the cartridge, eyes wide, laughing, until her laughter turned to screams and she clawed at her face. Her body blurred, flickered, and then erased itself. Another aisle showed Marcus slamming the store's back door shut, locking it, and writing the rules in red marker on the back wall to protect the next one. And then I reached the final aisle, where I saw myself, standing alone, holding the cartridge, smiling, whispering, reset. I woke up screaming, not at home, not in my car, but on the store floor. 4:01 a.m., the same time the customer had appeared. This time, there were no windows, no doors, no clocks, just me and the CRT, and on the screen, the words, Player 3 eliminated. Ready for final level? Yes/no. I screamed. I grabbed the nearest console, an old PS1, and smashed the screen with it. Sparks burst out. Smoke filled the air. But the screen didn't break. It bled. Real blood. From the glass. And from inside the store, from the deepest part of the stockroom, came a voice I hadn't heard before. Cassidy never finished. Will you? The last thing I remember before the lights went out again was the floor vanishing beneath me. No, not vanishing. Opening. And from that pixelated pit, I saw every former employee reaching up, mouth sewn shut, eyes glowing red, cartridge pieces embedded in their skulls. They weren't dead. They were waiting for player 4. You think the worst thing about a haunted game is that it might kill you. But what if it's worse? What if the game remembers you, rewrites you, until there's nothing left but pixels and pain? I try to escape, try to burn it, but now I'm in the final level, and the game isn't asking for my life anymore. It wants my soul. I didn't die when I fell into that pixelated pit. I woke up. At first, it was dark. Not the kind of dark where you wait for your eyes to adjust, but a suffocating, code black void that wrapped itself around your limbs like cold wires. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, I booted up. That's the only way to describe it. My eyelids flickered like a loading screen. A startup jingle echoed in my ears. A warped, slowed-down version of the retro reboot theme. The darkness tore open like static, and I was somewhere new. No, not new. Final level, Deb mode. That's what the HUD said. I stood in the center of what looked like a broken arcade. Half-rendered cabinets stretched into the sky like decayed monoliths. Dead wires curled from the floor like roots. On every wall, CRTs displayed different moments in time. My life on a loop, pixelated and glitched. One screen showed me in high school, playing alone in a dark room. Another showed me entering the retro reboot for the first time. Another showed me staring into the mirror, bleeding from my nose, whispering, "This isn't real." Every screen had the same caption beneath it, Cassidy.exe. That was the moment I realized I was no longer human. Not completely. A voice echoed through the broken arcade. Not Marcus. Not Eli. Not the thing pretending to be a customer. It was me, but corrupted, glitched. You progressed too far, the voice said. The player became the code. Welcome to the final patch. From the shadows emerged figures. One by one, the previous players stepped forward. Marcus, Cassidy, Eli, even Tyler, each with jagged edges, corrupted avatars, eyes flickering like broken sprites. They weren't entirely physical. They phased between real and rendered. You wanted to understand the rules? Cassidy's ghost said, "You became them." The corrupted Marcus raised a decaying hand and pointed to the ceiling. It was a giant scoreboard. Only one name remained. Player 4, status, active, objective, erase memory, complete loop, maintain legacy. I stepped backward, heart pounding. No, I whispered. I'm not part of this. I never chose this. Cassidy's grin cracked unnaturally wide. But you follow the rules. That's all the game ever wanted. And then the final choice appeared, bright and bold on a floating screen. Choose your ending. Accept corruption. Break the loop. Delete memory files. I didn't trust any of them. They were traps, just like everything else in this nightmare. There's always a fourth option, I muttered, searching the broken arcade. And I found it, in the very back, behind a cabinet with a flickering screen labeled Beta Testing in Progress. A console, an old one, Pre-cartridge, pre-digital. It had a manual switch, and beside it, a dusty sticker. Offline mode, for emergencies only. The corrupted avatar screamed as I approached it. "Don't," Eli shrieked. "That's the hard reset." Cassidy lunged, her fingers elongating like cracked polygons. But I slammed the switch down before she could reach me, and everything went black. This time, I didn't wake up on the store floor. I didn't wake up at all. I booted again, but now I wasn't in any world. I was in the code. I floated between lines of programming, memories converted into strings of numbers. I saw everything. The first time Marcus plugged the cartridge into the test system. The night Cassidy broke the fourth wall. The moment Eli begged the others to stop. The truth was worse than I imagined. The game wasn't haunted. It was a trap built to contain a piece of something older. Something parasitic. A sentient code fragment called NUL. It had infected games across generations, hiding in assets, mutating through updates, adapting, until the devs created Retro Reboot. Not to play, but to trap the entity inside a controlled loop. The rules? Those were instructions for containment. But when players like Marcus and Cassidy broke the rules, they let the corruption leak. And now I had become the new failsafe, the new code keeper. I was given one final directive: maintain loop stability, prevent external migration. I was no longer a person. I was a protocol. That's where I am now. Inside every cartridge, every copy, every dusty console in a forgotten closet. If you've ever blown on a game to make it work, that was me. If your old save file loads and something feels off, that's me trying to reset the loop. If your CRT flickers for a moment when no one's playing, that's me watching, maintaining, containing. Because if I fail, the NUL escapes again. And then it won't be just corrupted games and haunted shifts. It'll be the world that glitches. But hey, you read all the way to the end, didn't you? You followed the rules. You played the game. And now your screen's flickering just a bit, isn't it? Maybe your light's dimmed. Maybe you heard the Retro Reboot jingle just now, faint and distant. Maybe, just maybe, you're player 5. Welcome to the night shift.